What is going on, guys? MMA Island team, we got the fight picks, and we are back with the Halloween card, Anderson Silva's farewell. But that's not the fight we're talking about today. We're talking about Miles Johns versus Kevin Natividad. I'm going to start this off by talking about this fight. Kevin Natividad, I think people know, was supposed to fight Brian Kelleher, and I guess there was some COVID-19 complications. I don't know if it was Natividad that tested positive
It
or
was Natividad.
it was him, really. Wow. Because the fight was on. This is what I think this card had like so many cancellations. Wasn't this the 7 fight card?
I believe so, which was Overeem versus Sakai, I think.
Yeah. So that fight was ridiculous. that whole card was ridiculous because I remember waking up and thinking I was going to see 9 fights, and not only did I see 7 fights, I saw 7 fights with one opponent change, and that was the Natividad. Natividad had a fill in.
Wasn't it less because that was the Giles versus Holland card?
Which it was the Holland.
We're getting off course. Anyway, go on.
I don't know, but it was the short, it was the really short card that Natividad was supposed to fight Brian Kelleher in, and then obviously Kelleher had the fill in, and we don't see Natividad, but now we see Natividad, and we see Natividad fighting Miles Johns. The last time we saw Miles Johns, flying knee knockout against Mario Bautista, but as we know about Mario Bautista, I really think this dude, I want to see this dude fight again.
Me too.
Seeing him fight in UFC 247. Really want to see this guy fight again, having a submission loss to one of the top contenders in the division in Corey Sandhagen. Obviously, we haven't seen that sort of consistent vulnerability out of him. And one of my favorite things to mention about fighters. So going back to what we're talking about here, really interesting fight because you see two guys with very impressive records, 10-1 versus 9-1. Both losses come via KO. I think this is one of the fights that I'm looking forward to because having those sort of records where it's like they have one loss against pretty good competition, and then looking at for on Natividad's side against Glenn Baker, a guy who's only 4-3. So it's not really. It's totally different when you look at the sort of competition. That's not the reason I'm going with Miles Johns, but I'm going to go with Miles Johns in this one. We know Miles Johns had the really close fight with Cole Smith. It was like a grappling war for the first few rounds. The fight that what I remember seeing about that fight, and kind of seeing that Miles Johns is willing to take these guys the distance. He had the split decision win over Adrian Yanez, who we just talked about. I don't know, man. I got to go with Miles Johns on this one. I think having that knockout loss against Mario Bautista is something that I think is going to make him kind of have his foot on the gas a little bit, just because you're going into this fight having a loss against a guy who I hold in pretty high regard in Mario Bautista. And looking at the 3 fights before that, kind of close fights, 2 split decisions, 1 a unanimous decision, those 3 decisions in a row heading into the UFC. I think this guy's going to go out there and I think he's going to look for a knockout. Look out for a submission. Just try to push the pace and not have these decisions getting rattled off like he has in his recent fights. And Natividad, man, I was going to pick Natividad to beat Brian Kelleher. And I'm holding him in pretty high regard as well. So this is why I'm kind of looking forward to this fight, because both of these guys are pretty impressive fighters, and we just haven't really seen them face the tough competition and really like. Well, we've seen obviously Miles Johns fight some tough competition, but we don't have enough yet to show what these fighters are all about. Having only one loss in your career doesn't say anything, because people can have flukes. You go back and look at the best of the best of fighters. Some of them have KO losses against some no names. It's just what happens. So we don't really know. And this is a great fight to let us know who is the guy we should be watching out for. It's really what makes good fights is where you take away where these guys are vulnerable and all that sort of thing. My favorite fight to mention when you talk about vulnerability and taking away kind of leaving an answer that you like, leaving a question to an answer that can only be answered by the fight itself is the fight I talk about is Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, because you get 2 grapplers with underrated striking and put them up against each other. And what do you know, man? We got a 5-round fight. That was awesome. But that's off track. I'm going with Miles Johns on this one. Really think that this is a guy that is wanting to bounce back. And I think he totally can against the debuting fighter in Natividad. I think Natividad is probably going to get a second chance in the UFC. I think he should win or lose, get another shot in the UFC, just because this guy has been pretty good throughout his career before the UFC. But I got to go with Miles Johns on this one. Pass it on to Zach.
So first off, I want to start by talking about this fight by giving something that Adrian Yanez said to me. When I was talking to him, I was breaking down the UFC 247 fights, and I obviously wanted him to talk about the Miles Johns fight because he fought Miles Johns before. And he described Miles Johns as a little tank. And I think that's a very accurate description of what he is really like. He comes for and he'll get in your face and he wants to take you down. His wrestling game is the most prominent approach. Now, he doesn't go for a lot of takedowns in volume, but when he tends to go for the takedown, he tends to get it. As you can look at the numbers, you see 1.64 takedowns attempted, but with a 66% accuracy, that is a very high number. And something I've also heard, I've been watching his interviews leading up to this fight week. If you do not know, Miles Johns was undefeated leaving into the Mario Bautista fight. And if you don't know something about undefeated fighters, is they have a lot more pressure than others because they have to keep that O. Like that, it gets to be a burden. And Miles Johns has been talking about that losing his O and becoming not undefeated anymore has been the most liberating thing of his entire career. And you look at where he trains too. Fortis MMA. It used to be like the MMA underground super camp, but now it's actually come into relevance because of all the great fighters that it produces. He's been working in with one of the best coaches in all of MMA, Saif Sayud, great guy. I interviewed him. Check that out if you want to learn all about him and his coaching philosophy. But yeah, I find it hard to believe that he has not been working hard all of this time to develop a killer game plan and just Miles Johns 2.0. Now, Kevin Natividad is a guy who's very impressive to me. If you watch him fight, his hands are sharp. They are really, really crisp. This guy strikes really well. But I feel like the wrestling offense of Miles Johnson, the top pressure of Miles Johnson, just how strong he is. Adrian Yanez says what threw him off most about Miles Johnson is how strong that he was for such a little guy. I believe that he's going to be able to hold down Kevin Natividad for 3 rounds, get the decision win. I don't think Miles Johnson has never been a finisher. I don't think that's going to change today. I think he's going to grind out a decision. It's going to be top pressure. It's going to be pretty dominant. And yeah, go Miles Johnson's decision.
Well, we got another unanimous decision on our side, but I guess we'll have to leave it to the fighters to figure out how the fight goes there. But we got a unanimous decision here. We're both going with Miles Johns. Make sure you guys are letting us know who you guys got in this fight. The point is, man, we just really want to see what you guys are saying. Just let us know in the comments your support. Let us know who you guys got. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. I messed up the whole outro. Check out the other Fight Pick videos.